If the moderator tells you that you are not qualified for a scholarship, don't hold me responsible. I'm only doing my job. The data that was presented to me is something that looks like this, and the criteria I'm about to follow in order to calculate the scholarship package and every student is merit for is by the side here. So what I will do is to calculate the scholarship amount in this very particular column. Now, this is part of a series where I go about discussing Excel problem and how to find solution to them using Excel formula and functions. So if you have not watched the previous one we did where we calculate bonus for every employee in an organization, click one of the card above in order to watch that video. But for now, let's continue. So the first thing I need to do is to meet up all these criteria by the side here. The first one says basic scholarship amount, and these are the respective criteria. So I will start by introducing the if function, which is this very particular one. Now, the main important thing is that for a student to qualify for this scholarship package, they must have a GPA of 3.0. So I will specify that this cell should be greater or equal to 3.0. That's for a student to be qualified. Now, the value if true is where I will now specify the remaining criteria. I'll start from this very particular one that says if the GPA is greater than 3.8. So I will introduce another if function in this situation. I will say if what is inside this cell is greater or equal to 3.8, then what will happen? If the criteria is met, then give a scholarship base of $5,000. So I will introduce $5,000 from here. Then if the value is false, that is when I will now move to the next criteria. And the next criteria says from 3.5 to 3.79. That means if this very particular cell again is still greater or equal to 3.5. Now, this 3.5 to 3.9, when I specify that if it is greater than 3.5, it has captured these two range, because when it gets to 3.8, it will now automatically fall into this criteria. I hope you understand. So if it is this very particular one, then return a scholarship of $3,000. Otherwise, return a scholarship of what? $1,500. I hope you understand. So that is my value if false for this very particular if function. Then I will just close my parenthesis as far as this if function is concerned. After that, I will now introduce another close parenthesis again so that I will capture the second if function, and this is exactly what I have. So far now, I have already provide a solution to the first criteria. Then the next thing I will need to do is to break the line, and I will move to the next line. For example, I will use the Alt and Enter key on my keyboard. Then I will expand my formula bar by dragging it down a little bit like this. This is my first criteria. Don't forget, let me introduce a comma to specify differences. Then the next criteria says a student with an extracurricular score above 80 receive additional $1,000. So I'll introduce the if function again because this is a conditional statement. Now, this is extracurricular score. If it is greater than 80, which is this very particular amount, then what will happen? They should receive $1,000. Otherwise, nothing will be given. So I will introduce 0 for value if false. Then I will close my parenthesis for the second condition. I'm done with that. This is straightforward. I will introduce comma again, then press and hold the Alt key and hit enter on my keyboard so I can go to the next line. I want to do it line by line so that it will be clear and I will not confuse myself. Now, the second criteria has been met. The third criteria says if a student family income is below 40,000. So I will still introduce the if function again. And if the family score, this is the family income, sorry, not family score. If the family income is less than 40,000, something like this, then what will happen? They should be given a 50% increase in the base scholarship. So I will introduce 0.5, which is the same as 50%. Then I will multiply it by the base scholarship. So the question is, what is the base scholarship in this situation? Remember that the base scholarship is the first criteria that we were given, which is at the top side here. I think this formula is obstructing it, but let me see, how can I scale it down? Anyway, when you cross-check, you realize that this is the base scholarship. So I will now copy the criteria I have specified for the base scholarship from the top side here. Then I will bring it down and then paste it here because I want the base scholarship to now multiply 0.5, which will jointly give us the value if true as far as this condition is concerned. I hope you understand. So after this has been done now, I will hit comma on my keyboard. Then value if false is a situation whereby the student family income is not less than 40,000. And the criteria we have here is that if the family income is between 40,000 and 60,000, they receive a 20% increase. So for the value if false, I will introduce the if function again. Then I'll still specify the same cell. Then I'll say, okay, if it is less than or equal to 60,000, something like this. If it is less than or equal to 60,000, let me specify it clearly. 1, 2, 3. What will now happen? Then they should be given 20% increase. So I will introduce 0.2, which is the same as 20%. I will now multiply it by the base salary, which is exactly what I copied from the top side. I hope you understand. So the base salary will now multiply 0.2%, and whatever we get will now be the answer if this very particular criteria is met. That's if it is less than 60,000. But the moment it becomes less than or equal to 40,000, let me introduce the equal sign here. The moment it becomes less than or equal to 40,000, then this very particular criteria will be met. I hope you understand. Now, I have specified this very particular if function that jointly give me up to this point. Then I will need to introduce a close parenthesis so that I can close this if function that I am highlighting here now. So I'll come back to this very particular point. I will close the if function for this. Then I will now close another if function for the general one here. That is to say, I will introduce another close parenthesis again so that the whole if function I have specified will be closed this time around. I hope you understand. Don't worry. Just take your time, go through the parentheses, go through the formula. You get the message I'm trying to pass. So I will hit comma on my keyboard, and I am done with this very particular criteria. Then I'll hold option key and hit enter so that I'll move to the next line in order to specify the next criteria, which is the attendance bonus. Now, I'll still introduce the if function again because most of what we are dealing with here is conditional. The criteria states that a student with attendance above 90% should receive an extra 5,000. I have already introduced the if function. Then I will scroll up and select this cell and specify that if it is greater than 95%, yes, that's what the condition says. If it is greater than 95%, what happens? Then they should receive an extra $500. Otherwise, nothing will be given. So I will close my parentheses. This if function is done because it is pretty much straightforward. Now, before I go to the last section, which is the departmental multiplier, the whole essence is that whatever you get from this first option, the second criteria, the third criteria, and the fourth criteria will be multiplied by the departmental multiplier, that is given the department you belong to. I hope you understand. So I need to sum all this together first before I move to departmental multiplier. So that is to say, I will come back to this very particular point. Let me break this line again so it can move to the next one. The reason why I'm coming here is because originally, for you to even qualify for scholarship, you must get a GP of 3.0. That is the essence of this one. I hope you understand. So which is why I will come here and introduce the sum function. I'll open parentheses for it. I'll come back to the end here and I'll close my parentheses. But before I go forward, I need to verify if my sum function is correct. So I'll click here to see it has specified as number 1. I'll click here, it has specified as number 2. I'll click here, it has specified as number 3. I'll click here, it has specified as number 4. That means all the criteria I have specified line by line. It captures them as a single number as far as the sum function is concerned. I hope you get. Now that the sum function has been introduced, what I need to do next is to multiply it by the departmental multiplier. So I will introduce asterisk to multiply. Now for me to get the departmental multiplier, I will introduce the VLOOKUP function. So I will type VLOOKUP, which is this. Then I will specify the department as my lookup value. And then when it comes to lookup array, I will open this curly bracket. I explained this vividly in the video I introduced earlier at the beginning of this very particular lesson. So if you haven't watched that, click on that video to watch. It is well detailed and explained on how you can introduce curly brackets in your VLOOKUP function. So I will just open quotation, then I will specify the department. The first one I have here is science. Then I'll close quotation again, hit comma on my keyboard, and the multiplier for science department is 1.2, which is this. Then I will introduce a semicolon. After that, I will now specify the next department, which is art. I must make sure that everything is typed accordingly. They are very case sensitive. So I'll hit comma on my keyboard, and the multiplier effect is 1.1. I will now introduce semicolon again. So this is the pattern I will be using in this situation. So the next one is business. Then the multiplier is 1.0, introduce semicolon, and then finally I have engineering. So make sure the spellings are right. Close quotation, and the multiplier effect is what? 1.3. Close my parentheses, then the VLOOKUP function is closed. But before I do that, let me see. I will first of all close my curly bracket. Sorry, I made a mistake. Then I'll hit comma on my keyboard. The column index I want to specify is 2. And then the lookup range I want to specify is false, which is this. Then I'll just close my parentheses. So as far as the VLOOKUP function is concerned, we are done. I hope you get. Now, the next thing for us to do is to introduce the round function. So I will come back to the front here. I will introduce the round function, which is this. Then I will come back to this very particular place. You can see that as far as the round function is concerned, it has captured everything, including the sum function, as number. You get? So that whatever it is that will be our number will now be rounded to the number of digits that we want. So after all this has been captured as number, I'll hit comma. Then I want it to round to 0 decimal. If you put 1, it will be to 1 decimal point, 2 to 2 decimal point, 3 to 3 decimal point, and so on and so forth. So I specify 0 because I want it to be rounded to a whole number. So I will close my parentheses, and then my round function is complete. But you realize that after closing my parentheses, Excel is still specifying that we are still under value if true. The reason is because, remember, we introduced the if function in the beginning and specified that every student must have a GPA of 3.0 to be qualified for this scholarship. So it captures everything that we have done again, including the round function, as what? As our value if true. You get? That's for the first if function which introduced. So now the next thing we need to do is to specify our value if false. So I will just type in 0. If the person did not get a 3.0 GP, then no scholarship for the person, which is the 0 I just specified. Then I will introduce a close parenthesis, and I'm done with this very particular function. Now, as long as there is no error in this situation, when I just hit enter on my keyboard, it will execute just like this. But if there is an error, it will definitely indicate. When I was creating this, it gives me error twice. I had to check again before I now get everything right, which is exactly what it is now. And I'm explaining and sharing my knowledge with you. So since I have calculated that for the first student, what I need to do now is just to double click on this cell, and it will just run it through and calculate the one for other students. So you can see students that actually did not qualify, and if you cross check, their GP is not up to 3.0. So this is how you get to calculate scholarship of students, to know who merit and how much they qualify for, given a particular criteria that was specified by the side here. So that's it. Now, if you have any Excel problem that gives you difficulty, drop it in the comment section, or better still, email me at gemilo19@gmail.com. I will place my email in the description of this video. Send me a mail, send a description of the problem you have faced. After solving the problem for you, I will see if, with your permission, I can actually create a video similar to this and share with the public so that others can benefit from that very particular one. Now, the center point of understanding all this is basically to understand Excel formula and functions. And if you want to have a course that will go in depth to explain each of these functions one after the other so that you can understand them before you know how you can now begin to integrate them together in a single cell like this, click the link down below. I have a course where I explain some prominent Excel formula and functions. So enroll in the course and you become one step ahead in knowledge and skills. If you find value out of this video, tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification icon. Until then, I will see you in the next one.